if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're from, if you're with an organization or anything like that, that would help us know who we have in attendance here. I'm going to get started and welcome you all. I'll introduce myself and a little bit about Civic Nebraska, if you're not familiar with us, and also about the project, the TROVE project. So my name is Daniel Bennett. I direct our rural civic health programs at Civic Nebraska. So I'm based all the way out west here in Scottsbluff. And overall with Civic Nebraska, we have several of our Civic Nebraska team members on here. We have a vision that Nebraskans of all ages and backgrounds would be meaningfully involved in civic life. And so to do that, we have our areas which include our civic health program teams, which helps neighbors get connected to their institutions and to each other. We have our voting rights programs, which helps people stay connected and involved and engaged at the ballot box. And then we have our youth civic health or our youth civic leadership programs. We have some after school programs in the Lincoln and Omaha area as well. So in addition to all that, one of the foundations of our work at Civic Nebraska is trying to keep tabs on how we're doing with civic health in the state. And by civic health, we mean how connected are we to each other? What's our confidence in institutions like? Are we being engaged with our civic institutions and our civic organizations? And then political participation is the last pillar of civic health that we measure. So in 2020, we put out a civic health index that updated us on how Nebraska is doing in these metrics. And as a follow-up to that, we became interested in voter turnout specifically. It's something that we're involved a lot with on our voting rights team. And also is just a measure of civic health. One of the things that we're interested in as far as voter turnout goes is our hunch that it has at least as much to do with the community dynamics of connection and confidence in institution as it does with the personal responsibility of going to the ballot box. And so that's why we have an interest from our civic health perspective in being involved in this and better understanding what voter turnout looks like across the state and what are some of the factors that might correlate to voter turnout. And maybe there are some important lessons that we can learn there. So with that all in mind, I'm going to just jump straight to the tool and we can just take a tour around. I'll just provide a general overview of what the tool is, how to use it, and then we'll just have plenty of time to field questions after going over some of our initial analysis. First of all, if you can type in Civic Nebraska TROVE, and you can pull up our home site here. There's a little bit of information about how to use the tool, related resources, an opportunity to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what you're seeing. And then some of our initial findings in the report here. You can check that out. We wanted to be pretty light on the commentary, have most of that come from you all, from people who are using this and living across the state. And then if you click here, this is where you'll get to that interactive map. So once you're in that map, you'll see the default view is by Census Tract. So I'll pause here and provide a little bit of background about how we developed this tool and where the data came from. We have two main sources of data for this. All the voter turnout information came from the Secretary of State. They have a statewide voter file, all the registered voters in the state, which includes information, including their address and what elections, the past elections that they've voted in, past 10 elections. And so they pull that information in early December, which provides hopefully a pretty accurate snapshot of all the registered voters who were in the state at the time of the November 2022 general election. And we can see whether those voters cast a ballot in that election. And so Derek Urachek, then we started talking with him about this project. He's on the call, so hello, Derek. You might get some questions from folks about how exactly this was developed. He was able to take that data and geocode the addresses of voters to get latitude, longitude, and then we're able to divide up voter turnout in all kinds of ways by census tract and by zip code, including by county. So that's a little bit about how we got this data and developed this tool. So as you go in here, you'll see the default view is census tract. And if you want something different, you can also come up here to the select from data. You can click that and you can view voter turnout by zip code, and you can view by county as well. So this is where I'm going to start, is by county. So as you look across the state, you can see a lot of our counties are above the overall statewide turnout was about 55% in November 2022. A lot of our counties, especially, are smaller and rural counties, but also in the counties surrounding some of our metro areas beat that average, having voter turnout in 60 to 70%, or even 70 to 80, or even I don't know if we have any above 80%, but 70 to 80%. There are 8 counties that had voter turnout of lower than 50%. Those are all across the state, from Scotts Bluff all the way to Thurston and Dakota counties, where South Sioux City is, and including Grand Island, Dawson County, and then Colfax and Saline County. So then going by zip code, this is probably the level that will be most helpful for most of our folks in outside of the metro areas in Nebraska. So you can see this is anywhere there's a zip code, broke out voter turnout for those areas. And mostly zip codes are by town. So you can look up your voter turnout for Albion, or Brainerd, or Alliance, or whatever it is, whatever town you live in. And so a few things I wanted to point out here, just of some of the overall trends that we see. Already you can see that there's just a lot more variation within counties on voter turnout by zip code. You know, if you just look at the county level, you might think that there's a 50% voter turnout, and that might be 50% everywhere. But this map shows that's not the case, that you have a wide range of turnout depending on your locality. It ranges from in the 30% voter turnout, to over 70 and 80% voter turnout in some zip codes. So a few I wanted to highlight. I'm going to go to a town out here in Scottsbluff County. You can see generally fairly low voter turnout compared to the rest of the state, around 40% in Scottsbluff. If you click, that's how you pop up these pop-up tabs, which show the voter turnout, 45% in Mitchell. Interestingly, in Box Butte County and Alliance, 45 to 46% voter turnout. Right next door in Hemingford, that's 40 or 57% voter turnout. So up in the search bar here, we can also find our way to, you can type in your town. We'll go to Dawson County, and you can see there's a wide variation even within Dawson County. 53% voter turnout in Gothenburg, for example, versus 29% voter turnout in Lexington, and then in the middle in Cozad. A couple other ones I wanted to mention. I'm going to take us to Albion, which is Boone County in the central part of the state. This is an area where we have a cluster of high voter turnout. So Boone County is an all vote by mail county, but there's also Wheeler and Greeley counties next door, which are not all vote by mail. And there's zip codes in all of those counties that are very high turnout. You can see 74%, 70%, about 71%, 70% for Greeley Center. So that's an area where we have a cluster of very, very high voter turnout. Similarly, if you go up here to Northeast Nebraska, there's Knox County with Bloomfield and Creighton, and also Dixon County, where Laurel and Hardington is. Those are both also all vote by mail counties as well. And so you can see some of that higher voter turnout. Elsewhere in northern Nebraska, Cherry County has very high voter turnout. Some other areas in the Sandhills, Boyd and Kippahaw counties are not all vote by mail, but also have very high voter turnout. A couple other places I want to mention over here. You can see in Northeast Nebraska, this is Thurston counties and Dakota counties. For example, this is where the county turnout doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. So Pender, which is in Thurston County, has 60% voter turnout. Right next door in the Walt Hill area, 26% voter turnout. And of course, in this area, there's the Omaha and Winnebago Indian reservations as well, and that the concentration of American Indian population looks like it correlates with the voter turnout there. Also in South Sioux City, 28% voter turnout there. So one of the lower areas of voter turnout in the state. So now I want to focus in on our metro areas. So we're in the Omaha area, and if you go up to select data again, you can click on voter turnout by census tract. And this will probably be the most helpful level for those of you that are in metropolitan areas in Nebraska. Just overall patterns, you can see higher voter turnout in the western and southern suburbs, and lower voter turnout in eastern Omaha, North Omaha, South Omaha. And there's this strip across over in the Dodge Street corridor where we have some higher turnout as well. So this would be the area around Elmwood Park and UNO. 71% voter turnout is about the highest in Douglas County. There's also a couple of pockets here along the interstate. This is Interstate 680 that winds its way through Douglas County and into Sarpy County here with I-80. There's also some areas of lower turnout there as well. But anyway, as you can see within Douglas County, you go to some of these census tracts in North Omaha, 25% voter turnout, 27% voter turnout. Similarly, in South Omaha, there's 36% voter turnout, 36% voter turnout in that census tract as well. So this is a tool you're able to play around. You can type in an address in this search bar here and find voter turnout for your neighborhood. So I'm going to move to Lincoln, and I'm going to just type in Civic Nebraska's address just to demonstrate being able to type in an address here. You can click on that. It'll show you a pin of where that address is located. And then you can click on the census tract where that pin is located and find the voter turnout as well as the demographic info for that area. So similarly in Lincoln, you can see a wide range of voter turnout here in the southern and eastern parts of the city, lower turnout in some of the poor neighborhoods, and northeast Lincoln as well. So I think highest, 73%, the country club area, ranging to, in the Clinton neighborhood, 39%. So lastly, I'll just move over to our last metro area in Nebraska in Grand Island. As you can see here, there's the northern, kind of the core areas of the city. You have 33% voter turnout there. Right next door, 51% voter turnout. So some of these, some of the turnout by neighborhood can be pretty stark jump over not much distance. So this is the overview of the map. You can also, we've also included demographic maps. One of the things we're interested in this project is being able to compare voter turnout against certain demographic factors. And so all of these demographic maps are going to be generally by householder at the census tract level. So for example, we can click on median household income, and you could see what median household income looks like at the census tract level. And this is all 5-year ACS data from the Census Bureau. And so, so again, you can come in here to an area where there's more detail and see the median income for these different census tracts, and get that. Try to look at how those patterns compare, what the demographics, economic statistics for your area look like. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pause to field some questions before I get into some of the initial analysis that we've done. Any questions about how to use the tool, how it was developed, anything like that before we get into the analysis?
Daniel, Mary Lee Moulton from League of Women Voters asks, is there any way to tell what the numbers are based on a comparison of people who are 18 plus, not registered voters, but just 18 plus in Nebraska? Is that census information that granular for TROVE?
No, not at this time. There's the Center for Public Affairs Research. They put out a report on the 2018 data that was for all people of voting age. Currently, this is just for registered voters, so that would be something that is above my ability of data analysis to get those estimates for what the population of over 18 is, and then take the percentage of people or the number of people who cast a ballot and how that compares to the overall population of people of voting age. So that's something that we could look at if that's a preferred way to look at voter turnout. But currently, we've just defined voter turnout as the number of people who've cast a ballot out of the total number of registered voters. Good question, though. Any other questions? Okay, well, if not, I'm going to just share some slides then of some of our initial analysis here. And I'm going to preface this by saying that we do not claim to be social scientists by any means, but we were curious in what some of these trends mean. We can tell some of the general patterns just by looking at the data visually and seeing how voter turnout falls, what some of the patterns are in our communities geographically, but we're also interested, statistically, what does this look like? So here's a little bit of the breakdown by counties. You can see that some of those rural counties have higher turnout, as well as the outlying metro counties. By age group, 18 to 29 voters, about 30% of registered voters 18 to 29 in Nebraska turned out versus 75% of registered voters 65 plus. So it's an unfortunate trend that continues, but at least in 2018, we were making some gains on that 18 to 29 age group. And again, it's not exactly apples to apples, because in that report in 2018, they were looking at ballots cast out of percentage of voting age population. This is out of registered voters. So getting into some of the analysis, we just took the numbers by census tract of what's the percent of householders Hispanic or Latino versus percentage voter turnout for these census tracts, and just took a simple linear regression for these. So I'm just going to highlight some of the variables that had a stronger correlation of over 0.35 on the R-squared value to voter turnout. So one of them was householders Hispanic or Latino, where you can see somewhat of a negative correlation. So basically what that means is the higher the percentage of householders Hispanic or Latino in a particular census tract, generally the tendency is that there's going to be lower voter turnout in the 2022 November general election. Another one was households with income at or below the poverty level. So interestingly, household income had a lower rate of correlation, but this one rose to that 0.35 level of the R-squared value. So poverty has a percent of households with poverty in a census tract has a higher correlation than median income. But you can also see, the higher instance of poverty, or the lower, you could say the lower instance of poverty, the more likely we're going to have a higher instance of voter turnout. This is a population with a high school degree or higher. The more people you have in an area with a high school degree or higher, more likely you're going to have a higher rate of voter turnout in that neighborhood or that census tract. So this was 0.42. And this is interesting compared to the percent of the population with a bachelor degree or higher. You can see the lower rate of correlation there. Still seems to be somewhat of a positive correlation, but definitely not as strong as 8% with a high school degree or higher. And then also the percentage of white alone householders also correlated pretty strongly. This was actually one of the stronger factors of a census tract that predicted or that correlated with a trend of higher voter turnout as well. So the higher percentage of householders who identify as white alone tended to correlate with higher voter turnout as well. I wanted to mention also there's sort of you can see the all vote by mail boost. So in Nebraska, counties that have a population of under 10,000 people can opt to vote all by mail. And you can see these orange dots. These are the census tracts that are in counties that are all vote by mail. And you can also see that they generally outperformed other census tracts of similar median incomes that are not all vote by mail. So generally, almost all of these census tracts have voter turnout above 60%. And there's even this little like flare up here, whereas most of the data tends to flow this way. So again, median income had a little bit lower of a correlation to voter turnout than things like poverty, percent of households with income below the poverty level. But I did want to mention this because it's kind of an interesting way to see that boost that happens with all vote by mail. Okay, any questions on the analysis? We're definitely interested in your thoughts. If you're a researcher, if you're somebody who works in Get Out the Vote, we're interested in, we know you have a lot of expertise to share in this, but these were just our quick takes on the data to spur some conversation, and also maybe some areas where we can do some more research and follow up looking into the correlation as well. So interested in your thoughts. Any other questions? Yeah, so asking about were any of these numbers surprising? What areas we feel needs more research or analysis? I think most people are surprised by the variation of voter turnout within their county or their city, or even their part of a city. I think a lot of people, including myself, are surprised to see that we have some areas. Yes, we can definitely get you the PowerPoint. Some areas that are over 60% voter turnout, and others that are not even 30% voter turnout. So I think that's number one. It's something that's very surprising. It's also interesting, some of these things that correlated and didn't, just based on our initial analysis. And again, it's not going to make any definitive statements necessarily, but that median income wouldn't correlate as strongly as percent poverty, and which actually leads to, and also, the percentage racially of what correlates, that higher instances of white alone households in a census tract correlated so strongly to voter turnout, which might indicate, there's a lot that we need to talk about as far as why that might be the case. Is that does it have to do something with connections or confidence in institutions, and how does that confidence in institutions break down across racial and ethnic lines? So that's something to do some further discussion and research into. Also interested in how does our social connection play into this? One of the interesting projects is the Social Capital Atlas that I'll plug. They measured economic connectedness, so connectedness among people with low incomes and high incomes. What's the percentage of friends that people with low incomes have of people who are higher income, and that being a key to upward mobility. And also, we're curious about maybe that has something to do also with some of these behaviors as well, about whether you vote or not, or whether you have confidence in an institution to participate in it. So that kind of goes along with our underlying hunch here that these civic habits that we have as much to do with what's going on in our community and our relationship to institutions as it does with, whether somebody's a political junkie and is motivated to get out there and vote. And so, we'll be interested in digging more into those social community, those civic aspects of connection and trust. What are some other questions? I'm trying to monitor the chat here. We're going to give a briefing to the government committee and all the senators. That's a good idea. I don't usually interact with the legislature too much. I have colleagues that do that. But that's definitely something that we can consider. I don't know, is there anybody on here with Civic Nebraska who can speak to that?
It is on our public policy director, Heidi Ewing's list of interim projects. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Is there ever really an interim to the legislature? I don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, for joining us. Walt, what effect do you think voter ID will have on 2024 elections? That is also something that I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, but what I will say about this tool is that it'll be helpful to have a baseline and be able to see what effect did it have and where did it have impact. We also have some historical, we can go back in time with data from the 2018, 2016, 2020 elections that we could look at how do the trends play out over time. We just need some more resources, some more funding to help do that, because these are huge data sets, over 1.2 million data points. And so definitely we can continue to do that. But we just had to start with the most recent year right now.
Walter's question, I think this is going to be a very useful, right? What you're looking at right now, of course, is a snapshot of November 2022, and our voting rights initiatives team will be very interested in looking at some of the, I mean, it's going to be another factor. It's another data point to add voter ID. So I appreciate that question. And it's something obviously that we're going to be watching very closely.
Yeah, so please, if there aren't any other questions, I would just say please keep in touch with how you're using this, what you're finding, what you're curious about. If you have any questions that you'd like us to look into, please reach out with those. Yeah, we know that the people who are the experts about what's happening and what might increase voter turnout are probably the people who are living in these communities. So if you do live in one of the communities with high voter turnout, that is great. Keep doing what you're doing. If you're in an area with lower voter turnout, one of the best things you can do is just continuing to participate civically and in our elections and to bring others along to create that a good, strong culture of being politically involved. So anybody else? Heather, did you have anything to share from our team voting rights perspective of how we might be able to use this, or other invitations to folks here on how to work with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. And I want to say thank you to you, Daniel, and also Derek, who's on the call, for all of your work that went into this. I know it took quite a bit of time and a lot of work to make all of this happen, and really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be able to utilize this with our partners, and even in the community members and residents that might want to activate their neighborhoods and be able to zoom in and utilize the map in all the different ways it offers. So thank you. I'm really excited to use it. I also want to just encourage everybody, especially Walta. I'll look forward to following up with you and the League of Women Voters as we continue to work together on getting out the vote and just voting rights advocacy at large. I'm really hoping that the new voter ID requirement doesn't negatively impact voter turnout too severely, but looking at other states and looking at the course of history, we know that's a possibility. So we will do everything we can to educate and assist voters to get ready to meet those requirements next year. And hopefully we'll have some great turnout for these presidential elections, and we'll be able to keep using this tool to target those efforts. And then even after the election, to keep reflecting and improving and mobilizing and all of the fun things. So just want to say thank you to everybody. We are gearing up and we'll be ready. And I think that we can have a lot of really cool and robust conversations using this tool as it relates to voter turnout and all the other demographics that we have available here to talk about too. So look forward to talking with folks, and I would just encourage everybody to reach out to us. So, if you have questions or after you leave the webinar and you think of more things that you'd like to talk about, I'll just volunteer all of us from Civic here. Happy to talk with you and meet with you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us in our org.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Lastly, just again, big shout out and thank you to Derek Urachek for all the work that he put into this. It was really a lot of work, a lot of creative work as well. Also, I see Ben Larson on from the Secretary of State's office. Thank you very much to the Secretary of State's office for their cooperation and working with us to be able to have access to this data and have a better idea of what's going on in our communities.
Hey, Daniel, just love to say thank you to Civic Nebraska. And, as a geospatial person, this is like one of the most fulfilling and fun projects I've ever gotten to work on. And, I just think that the value in it is immense. And it's so exciting to see it take off and where it could go, because the possibilities are endless for us to keep this funding new things. So just want to say thanks for working with me. It's been my pleasure. Super excited.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Okay, great.
One quick thing, Daniel.
Sure.
For those who asked for the slides, we'll send out a follow-up email about where you can get them on civicnebraska.org so that you can get them. We don't have to email them around and worry about them landing in spam folders or anything like that.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, thanks for everybody for coming. Have a great rest of your day and a good end of your week.